Welcome to Slow and Steady, a podcast where you get to follow along as we figure out how to build and run a SaaS. I'm Brian.
And I'm Benedict. Each week, we'll give you an honest peek into our lives as we work on our products and keep the lights on by becoming full-time podcasters. Today is July 28th, and I'm getting cooked.
This is episode number 51, and I am still feeling encouraged. So it looks pretty hot in your house over there. Are you just like
Yeah,
getting
the sun is
direct
shining.
sunlight? Yeah.
And I'm getting direct sunlight through the window. But if I turn on the blinds, like it's not as bad, but then it's super dark in here and you can't see me.
Wow.
Well, we have the cameras off today, so you can't
true.
see me
You could maybe
either way.
yeah.
So.
You could give yourself a few degrees there. Yeah, how's your week been? How you doing?
Yeah, overall pretty good. Weather is nice. That's always good. Had a nice relaxing weekend. But last week was a tough week in terms of we got a lot of stuff done and worked a lot. And Friday afternoon we launched a new website.
Congrats.
So it's
yes.
Thanks. It's done. It's up and running. It's super fast. It's super nice and clean. So we're happy to finally have it out there.
Nice.
How are you doing?
Doing good. Got back from our backpacking trip late on Wednesday. Got a little bit of work done Wednesday evening, Thursday and Friday. Yeah, feeling quite good. It was a really good getaway. I'll put some pictures up in the show notes. I'll put together a little photo album or something. It was a really good week. And so I feel like I've got plenty that I could work on. I'm trying to think through exactly what to focus on next. But yeah, that's where I'm at right now. All good. I listened to Natalie Nagel and DHH on Indie Hackers. Have you listened to that one yet?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, I haven't.
Okay. It is very, very good.
What are they talking about?
Well, they're talking about the early, work-life balance in the early days of starting a company. And I mean, it's not too often that I would say I feel like somebody out debates DHH, but in this instance, I think that Natalie definitely does. I think first of all,
it's worth a listen just by that fact.
Yeah. I mean, it's fantastic. It's really good. I just think all in all, she presents a more like nuanced and realistic argument for what this is like. So it could also be confirmation bias that she says more things that I agree with, and that's why I think she outdebated DHH. But anyway, yeah, that's worth a listen. So cue that one up. Now the other one.
Do you have any?
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you have any takeaways from that episode?
Yeah. Okay. Is that DHH is characteristically extremist and opinionated and etc. I think that the thing that he was saying that I want to be as honest with myself as possible is he kept saying, look, I know that people will want to put in a bunch of time. What I'm saying is that much of that time in the end won't actually matter, and that if you can focus on just a few things and keep your hours and keep your hours down over time, those things that you didn't spend the extra several hours working on are just ultimately not going to matter. There's some nuance in there, and there's elements of that I disagree with, Um, because fundamentally you're like, look, there are 50 things I can do. I'm not sure which of these are going to work. I have to put in the time to do at least 40 of them. And then I've, increased my luck surface area and I'm more likely to see which of those turn out. Okay, all true. But I also think that if I am honest with myself and look at, the way that I spend a week, there's definitely some stuff in there that I could have just removed and therefore spent a little bit less time working on my business and a little bit more time, relaxing and recharging or reading or something. So that's my big takeaway from DHH's argument. Natalie, overall, I think is just realistic about like, yeah, it takes a lot of energy and effort early on, but just be sure that that you are saying this is not sustainable. This is not the plan. The goal is to get to, some sort of sense of balance, clarity, calm. And so if you're putting in the hours, don't brag about it. It's nothing to be proud of. It's something to get out of. So but then it's like, an hour and 15 minutes of them, going round and round back and forth with each other on those particular points. It's freaking awesome. It's like a couple of heavyweights, just going at each other. It's great.
I'll definitely check it out. It sounds like it's exactly what I need to listen to.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really good. I hate to keep hogging the mic here, but the other one I would love to want to talk to you about this one. The other one that I listened to, that I've just not really stopped thinking about is late May. Rob Walling was on Indie Hackers, and they had this bit segment where they're talking about pricing, and I think I rewound it like 3 or 4 times just to listen to it again and again, but because um, I know, and I wonder where you're at on this. I know that my pricing is currently wrong. Um, just, I mean, in the sense that it's the first attempt, so therefore, surely it's wrong. um, and so, what do I need to be thinking about? What other models do I want to experiment and tinker around with? Rob and Cortland were just talking so much about expansion revenue and how critical and well, actually, just how useful of a lever expansion revenue is. And if you can anchor it to a value metric that grows organically over time, and as your customers get more value out of the product, then they're happy to upgrade their pricing tier. Um, then that's just this incredible growth lever that you can unlock. So my question right now is, okay, well, so what is Headlamp's value metric? The number of teams a manager can have, the number of team members per team that they can have. So just thinking through all of that. Something that I'll hand it over to you, because something that he said on the podcast was, they were doing their cohort 2 call, and he said, how many people think that you have your value metric and your pricing correct, have it right. And it was like, maybe 1 or 2 people raised their hand. So I'm curious, were you one of the people to raise your hand?
I don't think so, no. And we actually, in that very call, we talked about our pricing, and it was kind of, I think the conclusion was it's not perfect, but nobody has a better idea like on what to do instead right now.
For user lists specifically?
Yeah.
Okay. And
yeah, for
nobody
user lists
meaning
specifically.
Okay, and nobody meaning you or Jane, or nobody meaning, hey, anybody in the cohort, can you throw some ideas at us?
I think nobody on the cohort had really a good alternative. Like there's this fundamental flaw in there, that one customer, like we charge based on users and an amount of users you store inside of user lists.
Yes.
But depending on the business you're running and your business
Mhm.
model, the value of one of those customers, of one of those
Yeah,
users, is vastly different.
totally.
And that makes it super hard to come up with a fair
Yes.
price per user or per batch of users.
Yeah,
Because
which is
like one, like
totally
you could be a freemium business and like have a million users in there, but they all not paying you something. So they're
mhm.
kind of, the value per user is relatively low, or the revenue per user is relatively low. And then
Yeah,
you could have like a super focused, highly specialized, super expensive enterprise tool with like maybe 20 customers, and each of those customers
yeah,
pays the company like $10,000 a month or something like that.
right,
And that's highly,
right.
that like the revenue per user is super high in there, and that makes it hard for us to pick a good price point that kind of works
Yep.
for both.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
Which yeah,
that's what
so
we're
which
struggling
is
with right now.
completely yeah, completely different than, an ESP or Transistor, which, their value metric is downloads and, like, roughly, measuring downloads or roughly measuring the number of contacts that you can email, that's kind of okay.
I think
Yeah,
it's the
interesting,
same problem
man.
with email providers, and maybe even with a company like Transistor, because like just because your podcast is super popular doesn't necessarily mean you get a lot of
That
money
you're
out of it.
making any money from it. Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and
right.
same with like email providers. Just because you have a big list doesn't mean like you can sell
You're
them
getting anything.
something.
Well, maybe then that's at least a little bit of evidence that over time and at a large enough scale that, that curve kind of evens out and it's all good.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, there's
Okay.
always
Yeah.
there's always both extremes. Like for some it's like one extreme where one customer isn't worth a thing, and then the other
Uh-huh.
extreme is one customer is worth a lot. And yeah, we're definitely undercharging people on that front, and overcharging the one on the other side. So
Mhm.
the hope is that on average it's fine, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, like we haven't been able to figure out a different metric that made any sense, because like, I mean, we could charge on messages sent or something like that, but that kind of
Hmm.
restricts you. Like, we don't want to put restrictions on things that make you successful by doing them,
Yeah. Yes.
because like we don't want to put a roadblock in there. Like every time you send a broadcast, you're first thinking, how much will this
How
cost me
much is
this
this
month? And
costing?
then
Yep.
maybe not do it because you feel like it's not worth it, or you don't want to pay this right now or whatever.
Right.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. That's how it
Interesting.
is.
Okay. Cool. Well, yeah, so I'm really thinking through how to uh how to add some pricing tiers. Everybody not everybody, but these other competitors, Tiny Pulse, Office Vibe, Lattice HQ, 15.5, just a whole bunch of, good lists that I could throw out. They all do per seat pricing. Um, and right now, like for any employee, and I am charging per manager. Um, and all of
Hmm.
those companies I just mentioned, they kind of go in the $3 to $9 per seat zone. Obviously, I want to try to build something and position myself closer to the $9 per seat. That's a different conversation, sort of. Um, but the point is that they all charge per seat, and I'm not doing that at all. Um, and so I'm wondering, I don't know. I think I'm just sort of wondering again about how I could experiment with that pricing model. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago because my theory was actually by doing $49 per manager that I'm actually getting more per seat anyway on average.
Hmm.
Um but it doesn't lend itself, I think, as naturally to expansion revenue. If somebody wants to just test it out at, oh, sure, $8 per seat, that's only $16 per month for me and one person on my team to try it out. And then, oh, okay, this is actually pretty cool. Let's bring in the other six folks. Um, there's just a piece of it that makes me wonder if I lower the barrier to entry, and make it a little bit easier to acquire customers who become higher revenue generators over time. So that's what I mean. Yeah, no answers or anything like that. I'm just sharing kind of what's going on in my head. So if anybody has any strong opinions or thoughts, you can find me on Twitter and tell and let me know what you think. But so that's what's going on.
Yeah. Talking about pricing, we reviewed our starter plan experiment yesterday.
Okay. Yeah.
And we
The
actually decided
$9.
to remove this. Yeah,
Okay.
the $9 plan, and we actually decided to remove it from the pricing grid. Like it's
Okay.
still a thing, but it's only mentioned in the FAQ, and we only move people to that plan when they ask for it, basically. So the default plan, like, basically rolled back the experiment in
Okay.
a way. Like we didn't remove it entirely because we still feel that it's a good, like, the spirit is good and the idea is good, and it's nice to support like people who are starting out. But like we looked at the numbers in terms of, did we get more trials, did we get more conversions, and that number didn't really change that much, at least not as much as we'd hoped. And now we figured, like, by removing the plan again, or at least hiding it a little bit, we can at least like the assumption is that we still get the same amount of signups, because that's roughly what we got before the new plan, but on
Mhm.
average get more revenue per user from that.
Mhm.
So it's, well, experiment step 2, I guess. Now with that change, we'll have to reevaluate in a couple of months and see how that changed things. But yeah, kind of
That's
interesting. Yeah.
yes. Okay. Thanks for mentioning that. That's interesting to hear. It's definitely one of those things where, the common advice and it makes absolute sense, is raise your prices, low, you know, uh people, customers with high price sensitivity on the lowest plans take up most of your customer support, et cetera, et cetera. That makes complete and total sense. I think where I'm feeling a bit of a struggle right now is, and maybe I just need to hold on to that for a little bit more, um, is just wanting to get the barrier down because it's new. There's not like these, brand logos on the thing with all these great testimonials. You know what I'm saying? That would then justify, $49 a month, $69 a month, $89 a month. Um, and so I think I just have this internal conflict of, okay, well, for now, the trade-off I have to make is getting more people in the door, by lowering the barrier for them to, feel like that the value is there and they're willing to give it a try. Um, and it's interesting that you all essentially like did that experiment and it didn't result in any additional or not a material uptick of trials. So
Yeah, I mean, this
kind of fast.
might be related to a lot of other stuff. I mean, we don't really know, but one thing you mentioned is like support is higher, but we didn't notice that. Like, surprisingly, support didn't really change. So
Okay.
maybe we got lucky in that regard. But
Mhm.
yeah,
Okay. Well,
I don't know. Didn't have the desired effect.
at least, right. Right. The other thing I've been thinking a lot about is positioning. So I want to go back and reread April Dunford's book. Obviously awesome. I think it was probably the best business book I read last year. I'll have to say that. Want to re-listen to the interview I did with her on Bright and Early, and I guess just try to think through how right now I am positioning Headlamp against Tiny Pulse, Know Your Team, Office Vibe, not quite Lattice. Lattice HQ does all this other like, um, HR. It's geared more towards HR, the HR office. I have the vibe of anyway, um, and I want to be talking specifically to managers about productivity and mental fitness and mental health. So, though, what I'm trying to think about is there a way that I can position Headlamp not as another, uh, productivity app, um, or management tool, but as kind of like a higher actually, as more of like an employee engagement consultant, um, that's automated, um, because and then that's about as far as I have thought through that is if I was asking myself, okay, how can I, if right now I'm positioned as a $7 month per seat or a $49 per month SaaS for a manager, well, the managers that I'm interested in are bringing in, a $25,000 employee engagement consultant and going to, you know, um, SHRM, SHRM conferences and RPI conferences and all of this sort of thing, and investing a ton into engagement. And so I'm trying to figure out if there's a way to position it in that way. So I'll keep you posted if I have any huge huge insights after rereading April's book. Um, so,
We had a call with April in the like as a Tiny Seed mentor, and we talked a little bit about like positioning userlist against like our big competitors like Intercom and such. And I think the gist of the conversation was to, well, basically not do that and
okay.
instead position it against like doing nothing or just like getting people who are just getting started.
Yeah.
Because like I
Yep.
mean, probably depends a little bit on how mature those tools are that are your competitors and stuff like that. But her advice was basically if people are already using a tool, the lock-in is probably pretty good. And
Pretty high.
if they
Yep.
want to switch, you'd probably have to replace all of those features the other tool has. And that makes it super hard, especially early on. So
Yep.
I think what she said was like in the early stages, don't try to convince people to move over because that's super hard. Yeah, because of
Yeah.
like missing features and stuff like that.
Yes.
But instead,
Okay.
like go after people who are just entering, just on the lookout for like a new tool to solve their problem, and maybe they even don't even know about the competition there.
Right. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. There is somebody who runs a company, um, that has been just extremely generous and gracious, with their time. We've just been emailing over, like, the last 6 months about Headlamp. Um, and just giving me all this like insight and advice and everything. They emailed me yesterday, um, about it, and we had this back and forth. But they were basically like, "Look, we're not a customer because we're locked into to Know Your Team, and we're on this legacy pricing plan where we just pay $100 per employee for a lifetime account. Know Your Team doesn't do that anymore." He's like, but we're locked into it, and so like the price is amazing, and we have all this stuff, all we've been using it for years, and so we've got all of our stuff already in it. If you were around at the time, I think we'd be in your sweet spot, and we would take a really close look. Um, and so there's a lot of what you're saying right now that resonates with that email, which is basically this person has been, basically following along on this journey and is a fan of the effort, um, and a perfect target customer. I'm not going to win them. So the likelihood that either of us are, in the early days gonna, have pretty good batting averages with people who don't know us from anyone and are already locked into another tool, that's that's a pretty tough that's a tough one to
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. So I should be going after Yeah, definitely thinking about brand new to remote managers, had this thrown on them, new managers themselves completely in the dark on what sorts of questions to ask. How do you run an organized, structured one-on-one that's not a waste of your time or your employees' time, and how do you keep yourself from looking like a goofball in the meantime? And they haven't tried anything at all.
And
Where do
maybe
I find
maybe
those
you can
folks?
also, not
Yeah.
entirely sure how that would work, but maybe you can target people who are like, because of COVID and this stuff, like, are new to like remote work in general, and
Mhm.
now like maybe in the past they just used to walk around the office and look at people, how they look. Do they feel like,
Mhm.
do they look like
Mhm.
they're upset or annoyed or whatever, or are they smiling and stuff like
Mhm.
that, and they now cannot do this anymore and need something as a replacement for that. Maybe you can position it in that regard.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. Okay. This is feeling good. Pretty helpful. What, thanks, man, talking through all that. What else anything else happening on the, when you mentioned it briefly, you relaunched the whole website. That's pretty fantastic. Any other notes or, pains or takeaways or wins from that whole effort?
Sorry, I didn't quite get that question.
Oh, so yeah, no, just from relaunching the website. Anything else about that you wanna talk about?
um, yeah, I don't know. Like it went pretty smooth, to be honest. But
Mhm.
I like, over the last couple of weeks, I have the feeling that I can only work at one thing at a time, and that's not even like trying to multitask and like do two things at the same time, but like I can only do like one thing a day, more or less. Because like
Yeah,
during the last week, I basically didn't answer any of my emails, didn't answer any support requests, like
mhm.
nothing. Just focused on getting this website done and deployed.
Yeah.
And so this week, the first thing I had to do was just like play catch up
Catch
with
up on everything.
everything else that was happening and that got got ignored over the last couple of weeks. So I
Mm,
don't know. I don't know what it is recently, but having a hard time doing multiple things at once, basically.
yeah. Do you this is actually something that, in that Natalie Nagel, DHH conversation, just like the number of creative hours that you can fit into a day. Did you, you ever experiment with, like, 8 to 9:30 is my time for email, and that's the number of emails I get to, and then you sit down and program for the rest of the day or flip it around, vice versa? Do you ever mess around with any of that sorta structure? Or is it just not helpful?
Yeah, I tried that in the past, and sometimes it works, but just recently, f- for some reason, it doesn't. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It maybe I'm too excited to work on the website and stuff like that. Like,
Yeah.
at some point last week, I got up and had an idea and basically went straight to the computer and like
Mhm.
implemented it, and then got breakfast and everything else.
Yeah.
So just like my mind was just too focused on all of that stuff, and that
Yeah.
made it hard to, well, switch it off and turn my attention to something else.
Mhm.
So yeah, I don't know. Should be a little bit more careful about that, and hopefully this week is a little bit. I mean, the pressure isn't that much on anymore. We're still working on the website, but yeah, it's. I mean, the important part is out there, and now we can like do all the new stuff we want to do with the website, like implementing the new documentation stuff and the knowledge base and stuff like that. And it feels like the pressure isn't that big on that stuff, because yeah, like we wanted to have the website out there also for Asia to be able to
Right.
suggest like
Right.
changes and be able to quickly add those things. So it was
Right.
like high priority to get this done. And with the other stuff, it's like if it takes a week longer than initially planned, then it's probably not that big of a deal.
Mhm. Mhm.
But yeah, would be still be nice to get it done sooner
What
rather
are
than
you
later.
what are you, uh, doing about the knowledge base, and documentation and stuff? How are you gonna have you decided what your solution is there?
Yeah, we're going to roll it into the website,
Okay.
and just make it a subdirectory on the website. And it looks like we will have like a little bit like not use the same design as for the rest of the website, but like make a little bit more focused on just the documentation. Not probably not
Mhm.
have the standard top navigation and stuff like that. Have a big
Mhm.
search box in there instead. Um, and yeah, just like roll into everything into there and use the chance to
Okay.
also restructure things a little bit.
Okay.
And I'm actually pretty excited about it. It looks like it's going to work out. Figured out a way to get full text search working on the static website, which is kind of exciting.
That's pretty great.
um, and yeah, with all those parts in place, it should make up for a good experience and hopefully also
Okay.
make the big Google happy and discover a little bit more content on our website.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we mentioned it, we talked about it last week. I was just curious if you had changed your mind, or how are you doing text search on your static site? What are you using?
I found a tool called, or a library called Lunar, like inspired by Solar, the big search engine thingy. And the Lunar JS thing is like a simple JavaScript implementation. And the way it works, like in theory, it builds an index on the fly, but you can also pre-render that index. And I wrote a little plugin for our static search generator to basically take all the pages in a certain subdirectory, build an index from it, and then have the front end load that index and search stuff. And it works relatively fast and good. So I'm excited that it's actually an option.
Hey, y'all. So, for some reason, at this point in the conversation, our podcasting software just quit recording my side of things. So, no big deal. We were winding things down. Benedict had a couple of additional thoughts about launching documentation and SEO, and then we'll sign off.
Yeah, like as I said, like finishing the website, and then we have to continue on the company accounts refactor or whatever you might call that. That's still like the next big thing on the roadmap. But I just want to get the knowledge base stuff done first because I mean it's SEO, so it takes a while to have any meaningful effects, or rather do it sooner than later. But yeah, that's it.
All right. Thanks for listening to another week here of Slow and Steady. We're keeping at it. You can find show notes and things at slowandsteadypodcast.com. You can find us on Twitter, Slow Steady Pod. Got any thoughts on the episode? Always reach out. It's fun to hear from y'all. We'll see you next week.